Thanks for coming out and watching the oxymoronic Reddit Professional Show, where I showcase the best and worst of the internet. Here I comment on brilliant and hilarious comment chains regarding dumb shit on the internet for you to enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell button so that you get notifications every time we come up with a new video. Enjoy this week's show.
Life pro tip: when negotiating a salary for a new job, always ask them what their range is. If they tell you, "We don't have a range," they're almost always lying. HR and finance will almost never sign off hiring a new employee without a budget being in place. As a first point, you should always push back on discussing salary as close to an offer being made as possible. The more they are imagining you being a part of their team, the better the negotiating position you have. Once you're at that point, ask them what their range is. Your goal is to understand where you fit within the range. The more of the essential and desirable points in the job spec you meet, the higher up the range you'll be able to negotiate. However, and this is the important bit, if they come back and say they don't have a range, then it's almost always a lie. I'll come back to when it isn't in a minute. As someone who has either directly hired or been involved in hiring over 40 employees across different industries, there's one constant. If you don't have sign-off from HR and finance, potentially via a senior manager, then there isn't a position to hire for. To get sign-off from those two crucial departments, you need a budget, the range, so the company can ensure that they will be able to afford the new hire, and that the salary is less than the ROI they will bring to the company. It's also good to know that it can sometimes be worth pushing for a little over the defined range. I once had a company come back with a £6,000 offer above the top end of their budget because they hadn't expected to find someone at my level. They'd under-budgeted and were competing against 3 other solid offers, all above the original top end of their budget. Now the only time that this might not apply is if they are hiring for a highly specialized position, either technical or executive/C-suite level, where they need to pay whatever the market is demanding. But the chances are with those positions, you'll have a recruiter handling the negotiations who knows standard market rates and will be pushing for as high a salary as possible without going over what's reasonable, because their commission is usually a percentage of the accepted offer. If the job you're interviewing for doesn't fall into those above categories, then be very careful, especially when there's a deliverable involved in the interview process. Sometimes unscrupulous companies have been known to use fake jobs to farm ideas from highly qualified candidates without having to pay them for them. And even if that isn't the case, consider carefully whether you really want to work for a company where there is a culture of lying to you before you've even been hired. I'd like to thank. I have asked the question on what the range is and they always flip it to what amount am I looking for. Do we just keep going back and forth, or how should someone handle that? I hate giving out a number first. That's when you tell them, well, I always look at the full offer and not just the salary, insurance, vacation, flexible schedule/office hours, work from home, etc. as part of a whole package. I understand the market rate for this position is between X and Y nationally, and we're in a high-cost area. This is the range I've seen, and I've got 10 plus years of experience, etc., to aim for the high end of that, or I know I'm going to have to do some learning to get up to speed, so I want a plan to get to that range within a year or two. Too much chess. I prefer checkers. What they want to know is the minimum possible price they could pay you to come and work for them. What you want to know is the maximum possible price they'd be willing to pay you to work for them. If either one of you figures out the other's number, that's who wins. But neither of you need to win. Walk in the room with glass door numbers. Know what the minimum and maximum averages are for the position in your area. Lay out your experience, abilities, those glass door numbers, and explain why you deserve wherever it is in that range you tell them you want to be. Fudge 10% to 15% higher for negotiation purposes. If you did it right, they'll probably counter. If you were too low or they were more generous, they'll probably just give you what you asked for, and you'll have room for upward mobility once you're in the trenches. If they decline, either glass door is wrong or they're underpaying. Lay out your experience, abilities, those glass door numbers, and explain why you deserve wherever it is in that range you tell them you want to be. Fudge 10% to 15% higher for negotiation purposes. This right here. Salaries don't exist in a vacuum. You're not bargaining over rare Mickey Mantle baseball cards or Marilyn Monroe's Hollywood mansion that have no real tangible price because they are so unique. If you really think you're in that position, take a breath. Look at what it costs to live where you're working, and look at what similar jobs, to the one you want, pay. You need to do this anyway, since even if you do extract the magic salary range without tipping your hand, how are you gonna know it's good or bad anyway? Maybe I am just too practical, but if I have to give the first number, I round up the high end of salary stats for the target job, usually one that's a step above my current job unless I am stuck trying to bail out of a failing company, and the inflate by 15%, No shrewd negotiating necessary. If they say yes but I somehow left money on the table, oh well. It's worked pretty well so far to move onward/upward in my career though. Glassdoor numbers have never been reliable to me, way too much variation in what job title X actually does. What's your current job pay? How much more do you think you are worth? Ask on the high end, phrase it as, I am hoping for, which implies negotiability, and run from there. When negotiations happen, first to move usually has an advantage. The real-life pro tip I guess is to leave a bunch of Glassdoor reviews at places you've worked with highly inflated numbers, that you're artificially raising everyone's salary in your field. Glassdoor isn't some magic you need to make this much box. You throw out the high and low outliers. The remainder is the range. If the range is 25,000 to 75,000, that's okay. That just means that on average entry-level no experience is 25K, and been there for years is average 75K. If you're awesome at your work, not too young, educated and well experienced, someone will likely pay you close to 75. This is not to say that every company will pay you 75. You may find that a given company will only pay 50 for what other companies would pay 75 for, but they may also have better benefits. Everyone hates giving out a number first, but it describes who has the leverage in the negotiation. If the employee has to give the number first, it's because the employer can pick from a number of candidates who are relatively close to each other in performance/value. If the employer has to give the number first, it's because the employer is actively trying to convince someone to join their company and the candidate can solicit multiple offers from multiple companies. Chances are you are not in the second category and therefore you are the one fighting for a job. The best advice is to know and understand your value before the interview. Salaries are not really a secret. Talk to friends and colleagues in the industry. Do your research online. Glassdoor is a last resort. Try to find professional companies that survey salaries and other hiring trends. Use this information to get a range of what you should expect your salary to be. Then at the interview you explain you are open to negotiation, but justify your demand. Explain why you are worth the top end of the salary, or whatever you are requesting. It's your job to convince the employer that you are the candidate they want and that they will make the right choice by paying you that salary. If you can't come to terms on a salary, move on. It is a business transaction after all. If you value yourself differently than your potential employer, you will never make a deal and that's not the end of the world. However, if you can't come to terms with multiple companies, it's probably you that's aiming too high and you should adjust your demand accordingly. And if you can't walk away from a job because you need it, then obviously you can't reasonably expect to have much negotiating power, can you? If you are in work, the minimum you're looking for should be at least 10% more than you currently have, and you should push that amount even higher as it may be negotiated down. You want a higher salary to price in the risk of moving. There are unknowns. How much will you enjoy it? How hard it will be, etc., and risks. At least in the UK it's easier to fire someone in the first 6 months of a permanent job and you'll get far less if you're made redundant. You need something to make those risks worthwhile and recruiters get that. I recently moved for 8%. Technically much less because the old job gave me 6% into a registered retirement account that somehow lost money during the greatest bull run in recent history. Cut my commute by more than half though. Like 1.5 hours to 40 minutes. Also feel much more respected, probably lucked out in that regard. I count commute time as a direct deduction on my salary. You're spending more hours of the day to work the job, unpaid. If you cut your commute each way by 45 minutes, you're making roughly 8% more for your time, assuming 8-hour workday. Nothing will work if the HM or HR doesn't want to play. Unless they're required by law or company policy to answer. This shouldn't really count as an LPT. You're only going to get results in certain places, in the US, specific states. Actually knowing what you're worth is the best possible plan. Having been a hiring manager for a big company, and now not wanting to be in management anymore, here's my suggestion. Pay information shouldn't be a sensitive topic between peers. Talk to your peers, get some perspective on what you're actually worth. But be professional and don't create a conspiracy. If you become resentful and start underperforming, if you wind up the center of some big blowout, that'll limit your career. At entry level you can't demand equal pay. There's a right way to go about getting what you deserve after a year or two. Get 2 really strong performance reviews under your belt. Have a sit down with your boss and discuss expectations openly. Expect the boss to meet you only halfway. If the cycle closes out and you feel they didn't come through, go find another job, aim for a higher grade position with bigger responsibility. I've had that sit down with my boss a couple of times. It's always nerve-wracking to do it, but I'm glad I did. I negotiated a pretty good salary bump, and I'm assisting people with much more technically demanding jobs now. If not for having those discussions, I would be making $10,000 less and not actively learning skills that translate to better employment opportunities later. I have a question about this, based on my experience. So I'm in a high-skill position, $130K, and with specific technical and commercial requirements. I find frequently when I get contacted by recruiters that unless I ask bluntly up front what the salary range is, it's a colossal waste of time. I've had numerous people try and headhunt me for a job with my title $50,000 less than I make in my current job. How do you avoid this and not discuss salary until the offer time frame? That makes no sense to me. Something I've had success with. Please note that this is contingent on the fact that you're not actively looking for a job. I ask any recruiter that approaches me upfront what their salary range for the job is. Worst case scenario, they get angry and say something like, if compensation is your number one requirement, then you're not a good fit for this job. Yes, this has happened to me. Middle case scenario, they lowball and you can either tell them that doesn't fall in your required range. I often use the words, I'm not looking for a pay cut to leave a job I'm content in. They either say thanks for your time or come back with a better offer. Best case scenario, salary range is good, and you're interested in the job, and you say, cool, I'd love to hear a bit more about the position. Love when you get that first one. Compensation is the number one requirement for my time. I am not working with my best friends on an unlimited budget, do whatever cool shit you want, job, and therefore the number one thing I care about is money, LMAO. I hate fake-ass recruiters and LinkedIn posts, man. So, tell me why you want this job. Great, time to tell them some fake-ass excuse. The answer is money. I work because I need money. I wouldn't be working if I didn't need money. I'd be writing or making films or some shit instead. Doing something that actually brings me meaning and I find joy in. That's a great question. The recruiter isn't the employer and the rules are a little different when a role is being managed by a recruiter. Even the crappiest recruiter will have some idea of the budget, because they need to know the role is worth their time. Getting the range from the recruiter isn't the same as asking the company hiring. It's absolutely right to get that range ahead of time. Got it, thanks. That makes a lot more sense to me. OP is referring to recruiters as agency recruiters. In-house recruiters are also called recruiters. You will often interview with a company recruiter first before going to a hiring manager interview. Ask about the range or make your requirements clear as comfortably early as possible. This is great info I wish I had seen before I negotiated my first promotion from hourly wages to salary. I had earned a significant amount of experience and education during my time as an hourly worker and made my way to management position. Initial offer was about $10,000 less than what I made hourly W/OT. Granted, there was a lifestyle benefit from moving from hourly to salary, but it certainly wasn't worth a pay cut. Moreover, there were many more responsibilities that I needed to be compensated for. I countered at $25K over their initial offer and they accepted it on the spot. I know for a fact I could have gotten a few thousand more than what I asked for, but was happy with the number I proposed. I've always wondered what the range was if they lowballed me initially, and accepted my counteroffer so quickly. They offered $10,000 less and you countered $35,000 higher than that and they accepted. To even make that first offer, that's a shitty company. To be honest, this isn't a very useful tip. The last thing any person negotiating a salary should ever do is discuss their range with the other person. That goes for both sides. You never want to tell someone the absolute limit of what you will accept on either side. It undermines our own negotiating power on anything more favorable when they know that you're willing to concede more. If they are silly enough to tell you, more power to you, but I think you'll find most will not answer the question.
If you enjoyed this week's effective way to waste time, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. If you are enjoying the series, leave me a comment below. A special shout out to the content creators. You frickin' rock.